Welcome to this video, which hopefully will help students with the Java worksheet that I have incorporated in between Chapter 3 from the Android book and Chapter 4 from the Android textbook. I was concerned, having looked at the Chapter 4 contents, that there was a lot of coding beyond the usual complexity of the Android coding that might be difficult for students to comprehend, and so I decided to put a couple of worksheets in between the two chapters. Plus, this will give you a chance to work with the Eclipse software from a much easier standpoint. I apologize up front for what seemed to be a series of constant interruptions to my office this afternoon while I'm recording this video. Plus, I'm having some battles with some throat issues, so I apologize because I just don't have time to remake this video perfectly. So it's yours for the opportunity to learn. If not, you may just want to visit me firsthand in my office. Find the worksheet that I'm referring to here under the homework test link in Blackboard. What we're basically doing here is looking at two concepts. One is called input and one is called conditionals. When you're working with using a computer program, whether it's on your phone or on an iPad, tablet device, or on a big computer, you want the opportunity to be able to put in your information. For example, if you're trying to calculate the tip you need to leave at a restaurant, you don't want to excuse me, you don't want to have a set value every time, because the tip will vary depending on the service quality and also upon the price of the meal for your family. You want to be able, when you're using a video game, you want to input the particular level that you want to play at, or the particular Netflix movie you want to watch on your computer. So we need some kind of input mechanism where we can type in the appropriate and requested information so we can interact with our devices. We also want the computer, once we've typed in this information, we want it to act correctly based on the conditions that we restrict to it. And we do that in programming by using something called input, where we put in the information, and something called conditionals, usually with an if statement in almost every language I've ever encountered. If you'll follow the sheet, this will help you maybe understand what I'm talking about, but maybe the video will enhance it that much more. I'll tell you up front also that I've been battling my little ink pen when I've been recording these videos. This is like my fourth take, and hopefully this will be the one that works. I'll go ahead and go into Eclipse first and show you the program that's already there. I'll show you the program in more detail, a little more slowly, in just a moment. What's going to happen when I click the word run in Java, I'm going to choose the very top option, which is also run from the run menu. You can also use the keyboard equivalent of Control F11, holding them down at the same time. And what will happen when you look at the very bottom of this screen, the console will ask you to type in the person's age. Be very careful and make sure that your insertion point is down here at the bottom, because sometimes on the first run it will appear up here in the middle of your program and it could cause some problems for you. So I'll click down here at the bottom. I'll type in the person's age to be 22 and hit enter so that the computer knows I'm through typing the age. The computer responds by saying you are eligible to vote. I'll run this a second time by clicking run and choosing the top option. The program starts over, and this deal that says type a person's age, that's referred to in programming as a prompt, P-R-O-M-P-T. A prompt tells the person the kind of information that's being requested, whether it's a person's age in this case, or the cost of a jacket from a store, or the price of a meal, or a license plate number, or what have you. So you need to give them a prompt so they know what kind of information to type in. I'll type in this case the number 6, because a 6-year-old should not be able to vote. So when I hit enter, it says you are too young to vote. Let's look a little more analytically at how this program is set up. Java consists of a number of classes, a lot of code that's written ahead of time, and then we just reuse that, so we don't have to have these massively long programs. We simply use code that's already been created and reuse. I'll give you the equivalent for those who may understand this. If I'm publishing a yearbook for a high school, or if I'm publishing a newspaper, I might get some great ideas, or for a website, I might get some great ideas from someone who's already done this and done it well. And I may just want to, now I'm not talking about copyrights, but you may want to creatively borrow the idea or the concept from them, and instead of having to reinvent the wheel from scratch, we want to use something that's worked, tried and true, and has been successful. And so we do that with Java and many programming languages by having stuff called classes. There was a class that we used in one of the small exercises called a math class, where it has a lot of the functions like raising numbers to a power, absolute values, rounding up numbers, etc. We have one called J option pane, where it gives you those little dialog boxes that we typically see when we're running Windows or Mac software with the OK and cancel buttons. We have one here where we're inputting keyboard information that's called a scanner class. What happens is the computer simply takes our information that we type into the computer and it puts it in sort of a waiting room area like at a doctor's office, and then the computer then will take that information from the keyboard input and place it in the variable that we want to use for calculation, whether it's a person's age for the variable, or the cost of a product for the variable, or the name of a person, first name of the person for the variable. We have to use two statements to handle this. One is called an import statement, which basically tells Java, hey, be sure you put in this code in my program. Even though I don't physically see it with my eyeballs, it's going to be there once the program is executed. And then we want to have a special variable called an object. In my case, it's called keyboard, that holds my information for me as I go through it. Be very careful when you're typing this from scratch that the periods and punctuation marks and equals and capital and lowercase letters are accurate, because they do make a difference. And one of the most frustrating things for students is making a lot of mistakes due to that particular oversight. Once that information is typed into the keyboard, we have several methods that they're called that will convert this information, just like with the dialog boxes. It will convert them back to integers, which are numbers with no decimal points, to doubles, which may or may not have decimal points, and to strings, which are just series of characters where math is not done on them, like a person's name or a license plate or a catalog number or something. To determine, in the case of the voting, whether or not the program should say, hey, you're eligible to vote in the elections in November, or hey, you can't vote, you're too young, we use something called an if or an if-else statement. And that's pretty generic in almost any computer language. Let's look at the program that I ran just a few minutes ago in Eclipse. Let's look at it in detail right here. So I hope scrolling up and down this screen will not make you too dizzy. First of all, what happens at the very beginning of the program, I have to type in this import statement. Just type it exactly as it is, character for character, capital letter, lowercase letter, the whole thing. And what will happen right here is that the computer will simply bring that code in that allows me to use the scanner class. And of course, the name of my program is called Program 1. You can name it anything you want to, as long as you use alphabet, underscore, and 0 through 9 digits to name your program. Every program must have this main method in there. The opening statement is going to be the definition of the object called keyboard that's going to hold my information when I type it in. Once I have that information typed in, I've got to have a statement that goes from my keyboard object, and it's got to transfer that into this variable right here that is called age. And here's the statement that does this right here. It's the one that's called keyboard.nextInt. What it does is it takes my information that I type in and transfers it into a variable. So here's what actually happens in the program step by step. The computer, first of all, will type exactly what's in quotes. Anytime you see this word print or print line, which is just a line feed, it will print exactly what's in quotes. So the computer will actually display the phrase type a person's age. It types exactly what's in quotes. It does not print the quotes out literally. The quotes just give me the starting and ending points of what should be displayed. Now, the computer will automatically put the cursor or the insertion point on the next line. And when I type in my information, it goes into this waiting area called keyboard, and then it goes into my variable called age. So sitting out here in memory is a box called age. That's what this guy is right here. And whatever number I type in will eventually go in that variable. So I'm going to type, let's say I type the number 21 in there right now. Alright, what happens next is this if statement. This particular statement right here is called an if structure. What happens here is this. And here's the whole statement right here, all of it. What happens is, in this particular area, and I'm going to erase this just temporarily, I just wanted to focus on this for you. What's going to happen, the computer's going to take this phrase right here, age greater than or equal to 18. I'm going to make it a little bit larger here so it's easier to see. I don't have a greater than or equal sign like this one on the keyboard, and that's the reason I can't type it. I would if there were a keyboard equivalent, but you will not find that on the keyboard anywhere. And that's why we have to type the equal mark beside of it. Because for a person to vote, they must be 18 or greater. So what happens here is whatever value is in age is copied right here. In the case of age, right now I typed in 21, and the computer says to itself, okay, is 21 greater than or equal to 18? That's true, isn't it? If that statement is true, what the computer does is it will print out the next line immediately following that expression. And that's the reason that it types out the phrase, you are eligible to vote. And it does that. I won't type the whole thing right here, write the whole thing, but we'll do exactly what's in quotes. Now, it ignores the else part, because that would be something if the condition were different. Now, let's suppose in this same program, if I ran it again, I'm going to erase as much of this as I can for you without making it all disappear. See if I can do this. And you have to bear with me when I'm doing this on a video. Let's say that I type in for the age this time. Let's type in the number 12. We know 12-year-olds can't vote, but how does the computer know? Well, when I type in the number 12, it puts the number 12 right here and says, okay, 12 greater than or equal to 18, true or false? That's definitely false. If an if condition is false, what it automatically does is it goes to the part that says else. So what's going to happen in this case, not because it knows about voting ages, but because I programmed it that way, it will do the statement that says you are too young to vote. I'm just doing part of it right there. You are too young to vote. So in the case of if the condition is true, it does that statement. If it's false, it does that statement. Hopefully this helps out. And that's the way the program works. We'll look at another flavor of that by looking at another program on this sheet. Very similar to it, except I've done a little bit of a twist to it. This time in this program, just to show you what's happening, I'll talk about it. What's going to happen is going to ask you for the price of shoes. Now you have to take my program. Don't take this literally, because some people will say, I'm not paying $39 for shoes, or that's too cheap, or whatever. Just go with the logic. Let me do the example, and if you have a personal issue with it, you can talk to me about shoes. That's not what I'm after. So we'll not argue that point. This time I'm still using the same import statement at the very top. Same thing right here. That hasn't changed. I'm using the same scanner thing. The difference here is that now I'm using a variable that is called double. That means it can be a decimal value or not. If I use a decimal value with the age, if I typed in 7.5, because kids like to say 7.5 for some reason when their age is that way, and then we get older, we don't want to do halves. I don't want to say I'm 60.5. I'm staying with 60. But with decimal values or double, we want to have that possibility. This time, instead of saying keyboard.next int, it now says keyboard.next double. You have to be careful about that when you're converting. So what happens here, the prompt right here in quotes, and I'm highlighting in yellow, actually the quoted part, sorry, is right here. It's going to literally print out, type the price for the shoes. Sorry for my handwriting, I'm a lefty. Now on computers I'm even worse. Alright, when I type in my value for the price for the shoes, and I can type in a straight number or I can type in a decimal number, it doesn't matter. When I say straight number, I meant without a decimal. What happens is that keyboard is the holding area, and what will happen, let's say I type in $20, very inexpensive pair of shoes, right? The computer will take that value out of the keyboard waiting area and put it in the variable called cost. Now notice in this case I have 3 if statements. I don't have the word else this time. So what happens in these, when it's true, when the condition is true, it prints it in every situation if it's true. And if it were true in all 3 cases, I would have 3 printouts. If it's false, it skips over it because there's no else. You don't see the word else here anywhere. So again, here's what happens. It takes the number 20 that's in memory. Now it doesn't remove it from memory, it just kind of copies it. 20's put right there, 20's put there, 20's put there. We look at the first statement. 20 is less than 39.95. That's true, isn't it? So it's going to print out the phrase, these shoes might wear out. And it moves forward. It looks at the next statement. Now notice there are two equal marks. This is something that's required in programming. If you want to do an equal situation, you've got to put two equal marks there. That's just a programming rule. I wasn't on the committee and you were not either, and that's the rule that goes there. It says 20 is equal to 39.95. Well, we know that in that case, they're not equal. That's a false statement. So what it does, it just skips over it. In the third statement down here, 20 greater than 39.95. That's false too, isn't it? So if it's false, it skips over it. So it only prints one statement. Now for the sake of argument, let's erase this stuff. And let's suppose I had in a different number altogether. Let's suppose I put in the number 39.95, the exact numbers. I'll type in 39.95 right there. It's going to test all three statements. 39.95 is less than 39.95. False. They're not. One's not less than the other. It skips this altogether. 39.95 is equal to 39.95. That's true. It prints this phrase right here on the computer. 39.95 is greater than 39.95. That's false. So it skips it. So in this case, only one sentence will print out, depending on the condition. And if I run this program in Java, which I happen to have here, I would go to the word run, and I type in the price for the shoes. Be sure the cursor is down here at the bottom. And if I type in 39.95 and hit enter, it says this price is perfect, I will buy them. If I run it again and I type in $100, or don't put the dollar mark, just the 100. Don't put, if you put the dollar mark, in fact, I'll do that to let you see what happens. If I put in $100, Java will not like it. You'll get some error messages there. You got to be very precise with programs. If I type in just 100, it says, forget it, I can't afford them. The reason it prints that for 100, remember, is because this third statement down at the bottom would have been a true condition for $100. So that's how the program works. You have to set it up correctly. You have to train the computer to do this correctly. The third example deals with a person's grade. Now I went back to integer this time. Again, nothing has changed in terms of the import statement, in terms of the scanner class object, in terms of this converting it in this case to an integer, because see, the grade this time is an integer in this third program. I've got three if structures. Now one of them, I want to show you these. The yellow one is just your if statement. If it's true, it prints it out. If it's false, it skips over it. In the second situation, the one in green, if this is a true condition, it executes it. If not, it skips over it. The third one is back to that if-else situation. These else's pair together. This is one big statement right here. So in this case, if the statement is true, it executes one sentence. If it's false, it executes the other. Let's take a look at how this works. I'll erase these from scratch so you can see how these work, and we'll follow what's going on in the program. The prompt right here that's done first, and it always starts from top to bottom in that order. It prints out what's in quotes. So it says, type a person's grade in the computer, or literally type a person's grade. That's what it prints out. When I type in the grade value, it will be stored in memory as an integer. Let's say that I type in 95. Let's make them an A. Alright, in this first sentence, the computer takes the value of 95 that I typed in. It puts that 95 right there. 95. Is 95 less than 0? False. 95 is not less than 0. If it's false, ignores it. Next sentence, 95 greater than 100? 95 is not greater than 100. That's false. Skips over it. Look down here at the third sentence. Now this one's a little tricky. These little symbols right here are referring to the word and. You might know this from algebra class, but just in case your background is weak, this is the same thing as saying that something's between 93 and 100. We are not allowed to write it this way in Java or any other programming language. If you do that, you'll fight the computer, and if you're the most stubborn person on your block or in your family, the computer will still win out. You know how it is. You kick the computer and burn it, and nothing's happened. You just have a broken computer. You still haven't won the argument. You have to write it this way. Here's what happens in this situation. The 93 is actually put here twice. Both conditions must be true for this to execute properly. All right, 93 is greater than or equal to 93. Yep. I'm sorry, 95. I told you wrong. I apologize. Let me change that. 95. Same principle, though. 95 is greater than 93. Yes, sir, it is. Yes, ma'am. 95 is less than 100. Yes, it is. If both these conditions are true at the same time, it does the sentence that immediately follows it. So it prints out, you earned an A. So why in the world do I have these two sentences that preceded it? Well, let me show you why that's there. Again, just a little lick of programming here for you. Okay, so I'll erase this and let you see it. So we'll clean the screen a little more. And always pause these videos if you get confused. Let's say that the grade I typed in, let's say I made a mistake, or maybe I did it on purpose. I actually had a professor that gave negative grades in English in college, and some people are crazy like that. Let's say that for some reason a person accidentally typed in for the grade negative 70. Well, guess what would happen? In this first sentence, negative 70 is less than 0, so it prints out the phrase, that's not a proper grade. Would it do it again? Nope, because negative 70 greater than 100 is false. Negative 70 is not greater than 93. It is, negative 70 is less than 100, but again, both these conditions have to be true for this to execute properly. And in this case, you got to watch it. In fact, I've got a programming mistake right here. Yeah, I've got a programming mistake right here. I should not even do this, because what's going to happen in this program, you know what it's going to say? It's going to say, because this is now false, and this is bad programming on my part, but I'm glad I did it because it's a teachable moment for you. This statement is false, so it's going to print out this part as well. What you have to watch out for with if-else, if you use if-else, something will print out every single time, no matter what you want it to do or I want it to do. See, I made a mistake right here, a very egregious mistake programming wise, but I'm glad I did it to show you this point. In this particular case, when this whole system is false, it does the else print out. When it's true, it does the if print out. So it's always going to print something, where these other two statements that are in green could be skipped over completely. And this is what you have to deal with when you're working with programs. If you're going to use the if-else situation, you better be sure that you have all conditions taken care of. Now, if you're actually writing these programs from scratch, and there are a couple of programs at the end of the exercises that you're supposed to do. One of them at the end of the sheet says to write a program that will use the scanner class to allow the computer user to type in a placement test score. When the person scores 80 or higher, the computer displays a message that says you passed the placement test. Basically, when you're writing these programs, there's very little you have to change on here. The only thing you have to change, and I'll use an eraser again just to make this a clean slate for you. The only thing you really have to do to make these changes, and thank you for letting me stall while I erase everything and have a clear screen for those of you who might get super confused if there's too much clutter on the screen. When you're writing these programs, basically the only thing you have to change is the name of the variable, whatever the prompt is, watch to see whether it's double or int, and then write your if statements based on whatever your situation is. For example, in that placement test score situation, you're not going to use 39.95, you're going to do something involving the number 80. And you'll just have to practice this. The first time some of you write programs, you're going to go, duh, I don't know what to do. It's your first program experience, possibly, and that's very natural. But don't wait until the 11th hour when it's due and say, oh, I can need help. You've got to be proactive and think of this stuff early. By the way, when you're doing an Eclipse program from scratch, what you want to do, if you haven't done this already, you want to go to File, New, if you haven't done it already. First thing you want to do is choose Java Project. Now, I always get screwed up with this on this laptop computer, so I'm going to do the keyboard equivalent. You want to choose Java Project. Do not choose Android. We're not using the cell phone emulator. We're doing just plain old Java. Choose Java Project. Pick a name for it. It might be exercises, and you can use this for the rest of the course if you want to. It's just a pocketbook or a book bag or a wallet or a briefcase that holds all your programs that you write in Java. Hit finish, hit OK, hit enter, and you'll have this equivalent right here that says exercises. The next thing you can do is you go to File, New, and this time instead of choosing, make sure by the way that your project name, package name, exercises is chosen, and you'll choose the word new and then the word class. Again, I can't get this going. You're going to choose class right here, and that class, if you'll notice where it says source folder, the class will be built inside of this exercises project that you named earlier. Whatever you name the program is what you have to name it when you save it. So for example, if you call this exercise 1, you are not allowed to space between them. Do not space. Java won't like that. It'll say type name is not valid. You've got to put them together. Either run the words together or separate them with an underline. You can even put a 1 there instead of an ONE if you want to. If you want main to be printed for you already, you can put a little checkbox right there. Click finish, and you can get rid of this extra garbage right here. That might make it easier. Now, one of my personal things, and this is just me from the old school of programming, I like for my braces to be on lines by themselves. You don't have to do that, but you have to be very careful about precision when you're dealing with writing programs. Now, what you can also do if you want to go kind of the lazy efficient way, and totally up to you, you can also, if you like, you can go in and copy and paste some of this code if you wanted to. If a lot of this is the same, it will save you some typing or save you the possibility of mistakes. You are more than welcome, absolutely, to go in and copy and paste some of this code from Word. It's perfectly possible to do that. Just go in and copy and paste it. Save yourself some typing. Again, be sure you change things. So if you're doing something about placement test scores, you shouldn't have a variable called cost. And be ready for mistakes. For example, you may forget that little X right there, which you may or may not be able to see. It's probably because you forgot to put that little import statement at the top. And the periods and the capital letters and the semicolons are very critical. You've got to be very careful about this stuff. Hopefully this will help you as you're writing your programs. I want them to be submitted from Eclipse because I want to see that you've written them properly. And then if you want to send me the file, or if you want to copy and paste the code and send it electronically through a document, whatever you want to do is fine. If you have any additional questions about this exercise, please feel free to contact me.